I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Environment. Each week I'm able to bring guests before you and to me that teach us something about the environment. Today's particular subject is going to be out of control because today's guest is out of control. His name is Jon Gafner. I've known him for well over 50 years. I had kids that went to school with him, and Jon and I became friends because he's been in the sporting goods business and we like to hunt and fish. We've taken trips together. His dogs have ruined multiple hunts for me, and I hope I've reciprocated on some particular occasion. He has lots of business interests. You might know him with Jon's Sport Shop, but beyond Jon's Sport Shop, he's an importer. Big-time importer, has thousands and thousands of guns and ammo, and probably one of the biggest importers of sporting goods in the United States. But he is absolutely a spontaneous human being. Be careful what you ask him, he might tell you. And he's my guest today, and I don't want to waste any more of your time because I don't know what he's got to say, but you're going to find it interesting. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Our producer, Ron Bullock, visited your warehouse recently, and he came back with his eyes popping and said, "Jon's got guns. Jon's got ammo." How much and why do you have all those guns and ammo?
Well, we have kind of evolved into selling a lot of the nonprofit groups' firearms. We still sell a significant number of firearms at retail, but we've sold to every major conservation group in the United States and, yes, even some into Canada.
And you import. Explain your importing operation.
Well, importing started when we found out that if we got too successful with two-stepping or buying from a distributor / manufacturer, our customer would just simply jump around us. And when we would buy a gun from Weatherby, for instance, we'd get up so we had some great volume with Weatherby, and then somebody at Weatherby would look at where the customers are using it, and they thought it was a bright idea for them to solicit those guys direct. So I would build up a nut egg of conservation guys that would use a Weatherby gun, and then somebody at Weatherby would just go solicit all of them, and I'd lose them all. So the only way I could change that is I needed to control the manufacturing, whether it was a knife in China, a gun case in China, or a shotgun, or a side-by-side shotgun, or a pump gun, or a rifle. I needed to be the manufacturer.
And so you learned to deal with people in China. I remember some of those purchases. You learned to deal with people. Now it's primarily Turkey, isn't it?
I'm doing a lot of trading in Turkey. China is still in my plate, but things have changed so much in the last 18 months. It's just incredible.
But when I'm in your shop, you have a lot of American-made equipment, firearms as well.
True. And what you need to do is it's easier to keep the gas tank closer to full than it is letting it drop below half tank. So when we've gotten low on anything, we overfill the tank, so to speak. So we weren't afraid to buy inventory.
Well, you've had inventory at just the right time, because it is my impression from the newspapers I read and from calling you and sometimes asking to make a purchase, and you just sold out the last 800 of them. There has never been such a buyer's bonanza of ammunition and firearms in the history of this country. Explain that and tell us what happened.
Well, that would be a 2-day show, but essentially, when this country stopped working and the pandemic shut down most of the businesses, from the raw materials that came in California to the steel that was rolled there and then shipped to the East Coast, New York, where it was made into casings to be loaded, the gunpowder, the primers, all those places shut down for 4 months. And it just simply has not come back.
Now, you have ships with containers coming almost all the time from foreign countries, just filled with sporting goods, but mostly ammo and guns recently.
Recently, yes, and the and the prices have changed dramatically. As recently as 13, 14 months ago, we could get a container of firearms, which is a 40-foot container, and that container door-to-door service from the door of the factory to our door in Wisconsin would run about $4,500.
Well, one thing you know is importing, another is pricing. You're very proud to be a successful capitalist, and you are a very successful capitalist. But some of this is having your finger on the psychology of the market, people. You happen to be a leader in that industry at the time in our history where everybody seemed to think they ought to have a gun and a stockpile of more ammunition than 3 generations of their family have ever shot, a kind of a mass hysteria. And please feel free to shoot me down. That's just my take on what's happened, and I want, because you've been in it, I haven't. I just look at from reading newspapers and calling you and say, you got any of this or you got any of that? And you say, I don't have a used gun here. I sold all 18 of them last week that came in. So I want us to take a break right now. And after our first break, I want your explanation of how Jon Gafner, the market genius, happened to be in the right place at the right time to anticipate an appetite for guns and ammo that this country and this world has never seen before. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis. My guest is Jon Gafner, a longtime friend, a local entrepreneur who has always had a great instinct for what people are looking for. And he's always been excellent at finding a bargain and promoting it and selling it at a profit. They call these people capitalists. And there's nothing wrong with being a capitalist. We're a capitalist country. And that's what keeps the economy moving, keeps us employed, and keeps us fed. But some are more successful than others, and Jon is one of the people who has just anticipated what I call a national, perhaps an international, hysteria and need to have weaponry. People who never before considered it in their lives have to have guns, ammo in multiples. What happened to the psyche that made Grandma a market for handguns?
Well, if you go back to not quite a year ago, just before and just after the election, the number of stories you saw on TV didn't make a difference what network you watched. There were riots, there was looting, there was firebombing, there were tens of thousands of officers out every night patrolling, and this country was in a turmoil. And people started to worry. And once that worry got out a little bit socially, this market in the last year saw a giant increase in first-time buyers, first-time firearm buyers. And we saw lots of them.
And these weren't primarily people wanting to buy their first single-shot .22 to shoot a rabbit in their garden.
No, they wanted something that they felt protected with, and whether it was an AR-15 looking type of gun or a pistol that had enough rounds that they felt secure, they were not looking for Western-style single-action .22. They wanted something with fire capacity. They wanted something that looked intimidating. And most importantly, they wanted something that they thought made them safe.
And so the result was many, many more gun buyers. How about the ammunition buyers? Often you would have a supply of ammunition and in 3 days it was gone.
Well, I can tell you this. The pace in which ammo sold was you could sell on an average year a volume of ammo, a dollar amount, a volume amount of boxes. We would surpass a year's sales in ammo in 2 weeks.
Give us a picture for the audience. You were having guns and ammo brought in by these large containers on ships, and you would have more than one container coming all of the time. Am I correct? Over this period of the last year and a half, how many containers do you think left China and other countries to bring things that you were going to sell through John's Sports Shop or one of your other corporations?
Well, the Asia market is not so much with firearms as it is the fabrics, cut and sew, gun cases, aluminum cases, cutlery, pocket knives, which incidentally went up exponentially as well. But the firearms industry, most of that business has been done in Turkey, and it was 4 or 5 containers a month.
Well, and talk about Turkey briefly in the gun market. At one time, I'm a little older than you are, the guns were largely made in England, and another time it was Belgium. Then we went to the Japanese manufacturers, and many of them made real high-quality guns. Now, what percentage of the guns are being made in Turkey?
I would say in the U.S. market, that are sold in the U.S. market, at least 65%.
Well, you have your own line of guns manufactured in Turkey, don't you?
That is correct.
And I have looked at other guns for sale on your rack that have other labels on them, nationally known labels, but if you look carefully, they're made in Turkey.
Absolutely. And the people behind the firearm, and I'll use CZ because it's a well-known name, just like Browning is a well-known name. Browning doesn't produce any guns.
Hasn't for a long time.
No. CZ does not produce any guns. Has never done. But yet, they'll sell probably over $500 million worth of Turkish-made shotguns in 2022.
Now, far be it from me to promote a lawsuit or try to cause trouble, but I have been in your store, and I have seen a CZ gun, and I've seen one that has a different name, your label on it. It's the same gun. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're 100% correct. Just like somebody driving a GMC truck that's telling you it's different than a Chevy truck, if you took the label off of it, what would they be?
And you have your own label. What is that?
Well, we trade as Black River Arms. We are a registered importer, and we bring guns in and firearms in under that name.
Well, you gave me a gun, and I shouldn't say this on TV because all your friends are going to be calling for their free gun. But you gave me a wonderful, well-made over and under that just fine wood, fine metal, fine detail, metal to wood, an absolute quality gun. And I've forgotten the name on it, but it's identical to a very expensive CZ.
You're absolutely right. And see that in the world of firearms, Turkey is a giant as far as manufacturing, but there's only 3 places in Turkey that can manufacture start to finish the firearm.
Oh, really?
Right. Small market.
Well, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Let's take our second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a number of subjects that relates to guns, firearms, safety, and maybe even a little bit of the right to firearms. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Wisconsin Constitution that deals with the same subject. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. We're talking about guns, and my guest is Jon Gafner. He and I care about guns, like guns, appreciate good guns, are interested in gun safety, have contributed much time and effort so that young people know how to handle guns safely, and he's intrigued more with the business end of guns. I'm more interested in the law and safety end of guns, but we share those interests as well. Our country's history is largely founded on guns. Remember that we were colonies of Great Britain. And Great Britain, England, the king was taxing everything, was forcing us to take soldiers into our homes, taxed tea, for God's sake, and that was sacred back then. Coffee has replaced it now. And there was an insurrection. And the people of America happened to have guns for their own safety and for the gathering of food. And so they were able to form militias. You heard of a guy named George Washington? He seemed to head it up. And because of their militia, they were able to defeat the well-organized armies of the king. And we became a new country. 1776. Guns were very, very important. The Second Amendment to our Constitution refers to a well-organized militia. For 200 years, the court seemed to think that that meant that the right to have a gun was a part of the right to defend your country in a well-organized militia. It was not thought by most scholars to be a private right. It was a public right. However, politics, part of every court decision that we've ever had in this country, and probably other countries as well, an interpretation recently, within the last 25 years, the Heller case has decided that it's a private right. It isn't that militia language is not controlling. And so lots more litigation and fight in the courts about the private right. It's pretty clear that you got the right to bear arms from the Second Amendment, but it's not everybody. They've made exclusions for felons, for mentally ill people, for people in prison, for people who've been convicted of domestic violence. An argument with mama when you're coming home from the tavern and you've had too much to drink, or she's flirted with the bartender. So there are all kinds of exceptions worked into the system, and the politicians have gotten involved in it. And so we've had we have an amendment to our state constitution that says the right to have firearms for hunting and fishing and protection is sacrosanct. And, of course, there's more litigation as to exactly what that means. Does that mean somebody in a mental institution has a right to a gun? Or somebody in prison has a right to a gun? So there are all kinds of legal, philosophical, and political questions. And gun rights come up in every election. And now, with the hysteria and fear from, as John tells us, with the riots and the violence, there's even more concern about protection and safety. And this is a hot topic. It's a topic that requires some real study. You didn't sell any guns to the people on the January 6th movement on Congress, did you, John?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'm pulling your leg. I know, I know you didn't. But this is all a lead up to. It's a hot topic. It will continue to be a hot topic. Where's it going from here? You're really the best I know of anticipating how people are going to feel next year. What do you think? What's your bet?
Well, that's exactly what it is. And whether you're betting at the $5 table or the $25 table, it's how much you want to put into your bet. This country has gone up and it has gone down. It has spiked and it has dropped like a rock. we're on the low end of that session of this roller coaster ride right now. Certain guns / firearms are becoming more available than what they were 90 days ago. And tempers have calmed down a little bit. You don't see the riot, you don't hear all the negative. And the focus seems to go away, just like in basketball. We're not talking about basketball anymore. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers coming back and we're playing football now. So we're not worried about the riots because we're not seeing them. And they've kind of cooled a little bit on the firearms. And the firearms actually started going a different direction. Started going back to sporting events. Started to be getting some sporting clays guys in here, getting some trap shooters in here, getting some guys wanting to buy rifles to go out west. Those guys haven't been around for a while.
Well, I can tell you this. For the last 2 years, a couple of weeks before deer season, I called Jon Gafner and I said, John, I don't have a deer rifle. Can you sell me a deer rifle? And you told me they're going out faster than they're coming in. I'll loan you one of mine. So I've hunted the last 2 years with one of your guns that you loaned me, and I know you'd like to sell me one, but you you had a better customer to sell that gun to.
And right now, buying a firearm is like, and I tell people this every day, it's like buying popcorn at the movie theater. If you want popcorn at the movie theater, they don't negotiate because they have it, and the only way you're going to get it is to buy it there. Otherwise, you don't have popcorn. Same thing with guns, firearms. If we want something, and we want to get a hard-to-get shotgun, they make us buy XYZ. I literally had to buy 10,000 pairs of Remington shooting glasses in order to buy 15 Remington guns. No lie, 100% true. And I still have most of those shooting glasses, so any listeners that want to buy some shooting glasses cheap, see me, I got them. But they make you, and this goes back to the late 70s and 80s, you get something that's hot in the industry, and you will pay the dear price to get it so that you can be the guy that says you got on your block.
Well, buying and selling guns is legal in the state of Wisconsin. Nobody does it better than Jon Gafner. Gambling is legal in the state of Wisconsin. And at the same time you're gambling, most of the time you gamble very successfully. Every once in a while, I fear, like the rest of us, you bought too much of something. That's life. That's capitalism. That's taking a chance. You're entitled to every nickel you make, and I still want to buy a gun. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. When I was raised in a rural area, largely on farms, guns were just another tool on the farm. You always had a gun on the front porch and on the back porch, within reach in case there was a skunk going into the chicken house or there was some other kind of a varmint that needed exterminating. It was handy. It was a tool on the farm. It was also used not only for protection of your animals, but for the protection of your garden. It was used to harvest food. It was something that everybody was trained to use and respect. Everyone knew how to use a gun. It was not a toy. They respected guns. It was a part of your training before you were 6 years old. Of course, at that time, the majority of the population lived in the country. Over the years that have passed since then, we moved into the city and people are in apartments and we have a lot of single parents. There isn't a male figure to take the boy or the girl hunting and teach them the use of firearms. And more firearms are available to people who have never been trained to use or respect them. And then, of course, the criminal element has taken possession of so many firearms, and we've had registration of firearms, and we've had many second-hand buyers and people who wholesale them and who change the identity and take the numbers off them. The use of guns has changed quite a bit. We still have the Second Amendment, and we have a state amendment to our own Constitution that attempts to protect the right to use a firearm lawfully. There are many exceptions for criminals, mentally ill people. Firearms today, because there are millions of them, may well again be an asset in protecting our country. But in the meantime, they are a real potential threat because they're in the hands of criminals. And there are so many millions of guns, there's no real way to make them disappear and allow us to start over and do it right. My advice to you, know how to use your gun. Keep it under lock and key. Keep them away from your children. If you have household members who have problems, alcohol, drugs, temperament, get rid of the guns. The guns don't kill people. People who don't have the discipline to properly handle guns kill people. That's my opinion. I'm George Curtis.